The Cincinnati Bengals got their big extensions done, but they still need to do a lot more to get back to the playoffs. That and more on today's edition of Locked On NFL.
The new Locked On NFL. The madman Tyler Rowland is your double shot of NFL espresso with the Locked On local experts on every major story. Get ready. Rowland is revving up. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Football fans, welcome into the Locked On NFL podcast, bringing you a double dose of the NFL's biggest stories with help from our local experts that know your favorite teams like no one else. I am your host, the madman, Tyler Rowland, joined today by Locked On NFL expert Julian Council. On today's episode, we're going to do some winners and losers in free agency. I'm going to tell you why the 49ers are big losers, why the Rams are big winners, but we'll start with some teams that I think have an incomplete grade right now, and that includes the Cincinnati Bengals. Before we dive in, I do want to thank you for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Julian, we'll get to winners and losers, and it's been 2 weeks through free agency, so we have a pretty good idea of the bigger signings. You know what I mean? Some of the smaller stuff will continue to trickle in, but there are a couple of teams that have an incomplete grade to me. I can't call them a winner. I can't call them a loser at this time. And that includes the Cincinnati Bengals. And I get that what they've done here is keep Joe Burrow happy, but I just feel like they need to do a lot more to make this team better.
Yeah, I agree. And it's interesting that you call this incomplete because I saw a report from Kelsey Conway, who covers the Bengals for the Inquirer, was talking to T. Higgins and Jamar Chase's agent. T went out there, hired a new agent who happened to be Jamar Chase's, so that to get that deal done. And apparently, had things not worked out this way, the Bengals may have some problems as far as keeping Joe Burrow happy. But clearly, this was a big move to keep those two receivers there and obviously to keep Joe happy, but have they improved their football team? And to me, like, I don't even know if you can call it incomplete. If they bring back Trey Hendrickson, cool. Like, he's been the only key part of their defense the last couple of years. I know they brought back BJ Hill. Cool. But have they gotten better? If their plan is just to outscore teams, all right, I suppose you can go down that route, but in that division, with Lamar in Baltimore, I don't know what Cleveland's planning on doing. Pittsburgh's never going to have a losing season, whether their quarterback is Russ or it's Aaron Rodgers or it's Mason Rudolph 2.0. I don't know. It feels like a loss to me at this point in time. Great. You kept your guys home. You kept Joe happy, but did your team get better? And I would say no.
Well, that's a fair assessment in my opinion, and I would agree with you, but I think keeping Joe Burrow happy is so important. It's so high on the list that it does make it not be a complete loss for me. And our guys over at Locked On Bengals talked about that reality.
Joe Burrow talked with Jeff Hobson after T. Higgins and Jamar Chase had their press conferences on Tuesday and expressed his appreciation for Bengals ownership in getting these deals done. I don't think that he's necessarily satisfied, James, but I think that this is important pieces of tangible progress that he's pleased to see.
Well, there's the Carson clock was lingering and it was creeping up. And it's one of those things that you don't want to come to. And I think what the Bengals did and Bengals ownership did is they made sure that they're not going to get anywhere near that in the near future. Doesn't mean they're done. With free agency, it doesn't mean they can be done with free agency. We've made that very clear on, I think, every single episode we've done over the past week. But keeping Jamar and T was crucial.
And I agree there. And look, Julian, we cover teams that aren't big market teams. And when you guys had Cam Newton for the Carolina Panthers, the Titans, I mean, Steve McNair is probably the only guy that I could even relate this to. And if people remember the conversations around Steve McNair, they're very similar to like Dak Prescott. They didn't treat him like Lamar Jackson. Some people try to misremember the conversation around Steve McNair. But the point is, you're a small market team like the Bengals. You get one of these special quarterbacks, you got to keep them around. And the ghost of Carson Palmer and all that matters. So I am in full agreement with you that they haven't done enough here to make the team better. They're basically running back the same team from last year that didn't make the playoffs. But the prospect of Joe Burrow asking out if he didn't get what he wanted here, that is the biggest loss that they could take. So I guess I'll give it an incomplete till I see what they do. But I get you saying, no, it's a loss already.
Yeah, and I'll say this quickly. Okay, he asked out. So did Myles Garrett. This isn't the NBA. These players can't strong arm an organization out of town. In the NFL, it's pretty much shut up, here's some more money, and go out there and play.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. So maybe the fear is a little overplayed, and that would make it more of a loss than an incomplete. But another team I did want to talk about, speaking of fear and incomplete, the New York Giants. So they're waiting on Aaron Rodgers, but right now I would tell you that the favorite for Rodgers is probably the Steelers. If you're the New York Giants, Julian, and I love this, I kicked the mastermind, Ross Jackson, off of today's episode. Get out of here, Ross. We're bringing in Julian, but I don't get to have you on the show as often. What are your thoughts on should the Giants pass on Aaron Rodgers and go to Wilson or go to Flacco? Should they trade up for Cam Ward, number 1 in the draft? If you're the Giants, what's your best course of action right now?
I mean, the best course of action is just to go ahead and roll out with Tommy DeVito and stink again for a year and go draft a quarterback in 2026 at this rate. I appreciate John Morrow wanting to be patient and to keep Joe Shane and to keep Brian Dable around.
Right.
But it kind of feels a lot like the situation in Chicago with Mitch Trubisky. It did not work out after they went 12-4 and Matt Nagy stayed around. Ryan Pace stayed around. They scapegoated the quarterback, and same situation here. That's the guy that you picked in Daniel Jones, and it has not worked out. Same thing with Pace, same thing with Nagy. They picked Mitch Trubisky. Well, actually, they inherited him, but it didn't work out. I just know they got Fields, whatever. It didn't work. So I felt like it should have made sense moving on. I can appreciate being patient. So, I mean, their best course of action, I suppose it's hoping they can get Aaron, but what's that really going to do? Is that roster good enough in that division? I know Philly's not gotten, I know they lost a lot of pieces, but are they really going to be that much worse? Dallas is going to get Dak back when he's healthy. They're a good football team. Right. I don't know what exactly New York's expecting to happen this upcoming season, regardless who the quarterback is.
That's the interesting thing for me, is because I agree with you that on paper it doesn't look like, well, let's not say on paper, but it doesn't feel like the Giants are a very good team. But Malik Neighbors, Andrew Thomas, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, they just added Javon Holland in the back end. Tyrone Tracy is a decent running back.
Sure.
I just feel like they actually do have some pieces here that I think they could be a competitive football. I would compare it to maybe your Panthers from last year. It's not a great roster, but you can win some games and be competitive. And
I mean, Tyler, go back a couple years. You bring up the Panthers, there's years where Carolina had Brian Burns and Derek Brown on the same team and Chris McCaffrey and DJ Moore.
True.
But they weren't a good football team. Why? Because they sucked up front on the offensive line and didn't have a quarterback. And right now, the Giants aren't great up front on the offensive line and don't have a quarterback. It's that simple of a game. So it doesn't matter right now to me, because even if they have a quarterback, are they going to be able to protect him? Because they have not been able to do that. So, okay, cool. Get Aaron. It's going to look a lot like it looked like when he was wearing green and white in that same stadium.
And then if you trade up and get a quarterback, now you've given up so many picks. Can you build around that quarterback? No. It is a tough spot for the Giants to be in. And that's why with so much still needing to be figured out, it's an incomplete grade to me. But let's talk about some winners in free agency. And I think that the Los Angeles Rams are big-time winners, and I'm not the only person that thinks so. Today's episode is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help take your business to the next level. Upwork gives you flexibility by connecting you with top freelance talents across multiple industries: IT, AI, web development, marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. You can find the right talent if you need help with a marketing campaign. Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who's delivered incredible results. The process is super fast, super easy. Posting a job is free and simple. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Today's episode is also brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center that lets you track your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. So stop just managing your money and start building wealth. You get great insights with Monarch. I didn't realize how much money I was spending on online shopping, and now I can budget smarter and save more. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. All right, Julian, let's continue today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about some incomplete grades, in my opinion, with the Bengals and the Giants. But now I want to get into some winners here of the first couple of weeks of free agency. And my big winner is the Los Angeles Rams. And it's not just me who notices. Our guys over at Locked On Rams notice an eerily similar feeling about the Rams right now.
Truly indicates that they're all the way in on 2025. You brought back Matthew Stafford, essentially, even though he was a Ram, but him continuing his career here. One thing we talked about last week was part of that discussion had to be, okay, are you putting better weapons around me? Are we going to upgrade the wide receiver position? We've talked about over last year, them interested in doing that, interested in guys like Mike Evans, trading up for Rome Odunze. Well, now the Rams get that premier top-level wide receiver that they've been after for the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, D-Mac, this reminds me so much of their run to Super Bowl 56 a few years ago that it's really it's uncanny. And really the only remaining piece is to go out and find some elite defender, because you look at the parallels between what the Rams are getting ready to do now and what they did then. They brought in Matthew Stafford. Now, they didn't have to bring him in, but they did need to bring him back. So I think that there's a lot of similarities right there. They went out and found a premium wide receiver that may not have been exactly what he was when he was at his absolute best. Of course, that was OBJ back in 2021. This is Devante Adams now. You just need to go find whatever the 2025 equivalent of Von Miller is going to be, and who knows how this all comes together.
I don't know about the 2025 equivalent of Von Miller, but hey, I think the Bengals, I said yesterday, the Bengals should trade Trey Hendrickson. Like, they need to get more draft picks. The defense was bad with him. They need to totally reload that defense, and paying all of those guys at the same time makes you have to hit in the draft. It's imperative that you hit in the draft. And sorry, look at the Bengals recently in the draft. They haven't hit. So giving yourself more swings is the best way to fight that battle, in my opinion. Trey Hendrickson to the Rams would make a ton of sense. There's connective tissue between those two organizations, of course, as well. But at the end of the day, regardless of whether they were able to do that or not, bringing back Matthew Stafford, I thought the other options outside of Stafford were despicable. Bringing in Devante Adams, who I still think is a very good, he may not be top 5 elite, top 10, but Devante Adams is still a very good wide receiver. They bring back Alaric Jackson on the offensive line. I'm a Poona Ford guy. I love Poona Ford. Adding him to an already very good defensive line. Like, I just like what the Rams have done here, and I think they can be very, very competitive again this year.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't really been bad under Sean McVay, sans one season. Like, they've always been competitive. And, like, I agree with you. This is going to be a good football team again in 2025, provided that obviously Matthew Stafford stays healthy. And man, he did a hell of a job this past year. I don't think people have talked a lot about all the injuries that they had at the beginning of the season, and yet they were still there in that divisional round game on the road in Philly in the snow with an opportunity to win that game. And you go back to Week 4, Week 5, earlier in the year, you would not expected LA to be in that position. So yeah, bring back Stafford. They had to do that. Like, you look at all these teams. We just talked about the Giants. They don't have a quarterback. Pittsburgh doesn't have a quarterback. What are you going to do if you don't have a quarterback? And to shore up the offensive line, which the injuries, like I talked about, they had those, but to get those guys back, like, that's huge additions. And I mean, Poona Ford, if you look at their defense last year, what was their Achilles heel? They could not stop the run. Saquon ran all over them. Like, Saquon ran all over everybody, but still, LA could not stop the run. And typically when your season comes to a close, in the playoffs especially, your weakness is shown. And that week weakness was the inability to stop the run. Puna Ford was excellent last year. They're in LA with the Chargers in that same stadium stopping the run. So that's a big move for them. And I don't know about Trey Hendrickson. Like Chris Shula at DC runs a 3-4 scheme. Traditionally, Hendrickson's been a 4-3 hand in the dirt kind of guy. At this point in his career, can he be able to transition, want to stand up? Maybe for a chance to win a Super Bowl, he may want to do that. But I don't know, scheme-wise, that makes sense. But as far as like talent-wise, you can try to make it work.
You know what, Julian? Here's how I look at that. Most of NFL defenses played nickel anyway. Whether you want to stand up, you want to put your hand in the dirt, you're a 4-down lineman, whatever. But you are right. The base scheme is not a perfect fit. But hey, you're going to rush the passer for us in nickel packages on passing downs. Maybe it doesn't matter as much. But that is a very good point. I do want to move to another winner that I have here, and it's the Seattle Seahawks. So I wouldn't call them like a monster winner or anything like that. But here's what I would say. The trade-off that they made of Geno Smith and DK Metcalf with what they're going to be paid going forward to go to Sam Darnold on basically a 1-year, $37 million deal, Cooper Kupp on essentially a 1-year, $15 million deal, and get a second and third round draft pick. I like the other side of that Seattle went to, even if I don't think it fundamentally changes how good their football team is. But if I'm going to be at this place, I'd rather have the extra picks and the smaller financial commitment versus the bigger financial commitment and less draft picks. So I don't think it fundamentally changed where they are as a team, but I just like the flexible position that they're in now compared to what they would have been if they picked the other path. So I will call them a winner for that reason.
Interesting. I've always been a players over picks kind of guy. Obviously, you have to be able to draft and develop if you want to win at a high level. And the Rams, we just talked about that team. Like, they have not had a lot of high round draft picks in a long time because of how they've been players over picks, and they've nailed these picks of recent. So I can understand that logic, but to me, man, they got worse at every position. They got worse at quarterback. I watched Sam here in Carolina. We all watched him in New York. We watched what he did last year, and I was happy for him because by all accounts, great dude, has worked his tail off. Situation in New York was not great. Situation in Carolina was not great. And to be in that same scheme for 2 years in a row, because he was in that same scheme in San Francisco, I was happy for him. But when it mattered most, he let him down. And yeah, the offensive line didn't protect in that game against LA, but still, like, Sam Darnold is not a better quarterback than Geno Smith. At no point in his career has he been a better player than Geno. And then you look at Cooper Kupp, like, the Rams have moved on and got Devante Adams. I think that they've upgraded in that position. DK Metcalf, at this stage of his career, going forward, is a better player than Cooper Kupp. So I can't see how they're winners when they're much worse, in my opinion, at quarterback. They're worse at receiver, offensive line. Who's protecting Sam?
Still bad.
Because they don't have an interior. And this has been an issue with John Snyder, who's well-respected throughout the league. He will not spend money to protect guys in the interior. What did Carolina do last offseason? They spent big money on Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis, who came from Seattle. What did Chicago do this past year? They traded, and they've got a bunch of people to protect their quarterback. It's the old New Orleans Saints Drew Brees thing, protect your quarterback up the middle. Tom Brady couldn't handle pressure up the middle. Sam Darnold can't handle pressure up the middle, around the corner, when there's ghosts around. So I just don't see how they're winners at all when they got a worse quarterback and they have not done anything to protect that quarterback.
I agree with you that they may not be better, but I don't think that they were ever doing anything of significance with Geno and DK Metcalf. So taking that step back and having that flexibility going forward, as opposed to continuing to fight, with a limited ceiling, I guess that's the way I view it. But I get what you're saying. In theory,
I think
it did get worse.
Significantly worse. That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't think this is a 10-win team. This is like a 6-win team at this point in time, to me.
I guess I didn't view them as a 10-win team last year when they started out 4-0. I'm like, this is not real. Like, this is an easy schedule. But I get what you're saying. I do want to also mention they bring back Ernest Jones. They bring in DeMarcus Lawrence to help on defense. So I do like some of those moves. Obviously, the offseason, there's a lot more player acquisition to take place. But I like that you pushed back on that one. That's an interesting way to look at it. I do quickly want to mention the Vikings. Bringing in Aaron Jones, bringing in Jordan Mason, or bringing back Aaron Jones. They bring in Will Fries. They bring in Ryan Kelly on the interior, which is what we're talking about. You add Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave to the defensive line. You bring back Harrison Smith and Byron Murphy in the secondary. I know that they're moving on from Sam Darnold and going to J.J. McCarthy, and that will ultimately decide how the season goes. But I really like what the Vikings have done so far.
Yeah, I agree. And look, you can talk about the player acquisitions. They still have Brian Flores as their DC. And I know he wasn't somebody that was highly touted in the past coaching cycle. Maybe that will change moving forward. Who knows? I know there's still that lawsuit against the NFL as far as the hiring practices that we don't
He
really
needs to be
think
a head
about
coach.
anymore. Yeah, he should.
What are we doing?
But having him back and then getting those pieces, like I think this team's going to be good again. And then, I mean, we'll see what they do at quarterback. I don't think Rodgers makes any sense. He drafted JJ McCarthy for a year or for a reason. I understand he was out, not able to get those needed reps in practice this past season, but you saw what you could do with Sam. You tell me you can't do that, JJ, when you're going to have a defense as good as it was last year, probably better. So I like what they've done so far as well.
Yeah, I'm with you there. But hey, with winners, there come losers. Let's talk about them.
The NCAA tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown. Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup. Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free. It's your team every day.
All right, Julian, we'll cap off today's edition of Locked On NFL. We talked about some incomplete grades, some winners with an asterisk there, and then we'll talk about some losers here to cap things off. Before we do, thanks again for making Locked On NFL your first listen and for being an everydayer here with us at the Locked On Podcast Network. Make sure you check out the afternoon edition of Locked On NFL with the OG, the barber, Tony Wiggins. I'm kind of a madman, obviously, by the name Tony, maybe a little more cool-headed, some more experience in the industry. Maybe you get the fire here with me. You get a little bit of the wisdom with Tony. So check that out. But the 49ers are the biggest loser to me in free agency so far because of all the talent that they've lost. And our guys over at Locked On 49ers talked about that.
But with all the moves that they've done in the offseason, I know there's a lot of people complaining and sad about it, but you're talking about a team that won 6 games last year. This is not a very good football team. Like a lot of these guys just needed to go. You can bring in some fresh blood, some guys that weren't around last year to sit through all that losing. You bring in some guys, you go through the draft. Maybe we still see another free agent or 7, that they add between now and then because they gotta fill out a roster. But you really just need to hit in the draft, right? I mean, you need to get 3, 4, 5 starters, I think, out of this draft in order to actually fill the football team.
We look at the offense. The entire offense is back, minus Bo Samuel and minus Aaron Banks, but the guy who filled in for him, Ben Barch, is back, and he was fine. Right? I don't think they're missing a ton there. They need to address the offensive line, but I think Chris Foerster, 49ers offensive line coach, and the 49ers like Jake Brendel at center, like Colton McKivitz at right tackle, a lot more than most 49ers fans if you polled them. So I don't think they see those needs as much as some 49ers fans do on the offensive line.
Well, that's great. Every team loves their guys, but I mean, Deebo Samuel, Aaron Banks, Javon Hargrave, Leonard Floyd, Malik Collins, Hufanga, Dre Greenlaw, Jalen Moore, Shavarius Ward. Like, they may have won 6 games last year and they need change, but losing all that talent and not replacing really any of it, I'm sorry. I have a hard time believing that the 49ers are going to somehow be significantly better this year. They don't just need to be better than the 6 wins they had last year. They have Super Bowl expectations. They want to be one of the best teams in the NFC. And I'm sorry, I just do not see a path to that this offseason with how it started.
Can you read that list off to me one more time, please?
Yes. Deebo Samuel, Aaron Banks, Javon Hargrave, Leonard Floyd, Malik Collins, Hufanga, Dre Greenlaw, Jalen Moore, Shavarius Ward.
So they barely had Dre Greenlaw last year. They barely have Hargrave because he was out for like the majority of the season. They missed out Hufanga as well. So it's like they already didn't really have these guys a year ago. So you kind of question like how big of a loss they are because it's not like they haven't known what life is without them. And guys had to step into their place and like they got a year of experience. I do love the point that they brought up there on the show that they're bringing back the majority of their offense. Trent Williams, best left tackle in football, is coming back. Brock Purdy, he's still there. They still have Brandon Ayuk for now. We'll see how that plays out. McCaffrey, I haven't heard any update as far as what's going on with the Achilles tendonitis. I mean, I'm praying for Christian that it does not pop, but, but he's back. Like, as long as they can stay healthy, because that's really been their issue. Because a couple years ago, they had like those 2 games at MetLife where knees just kept snapping on the field, and that was their season.
Right.
And then when they were healthy the next year, what were they like right back in the Super Bowl? So that's just to me is the health. I'm not super concerned about the 49ers. They have not made any splash signings. Like the Mac Jones thing is a little interesting if you want to play the what if game. Because
Brock Purdy can't play around. Brock Purdy can't hold out because San Francisco, just like they did with you to Trey Lance, they will snake you and go with Mac Jones. And I gotta be honest with you, Brock Purdy's a solid quarterback, man, but I don't know about paying him $50 million, $55 million a year. I don't know, man.
No,
he's more closer to Sam Darnold, 1 year, $37 million than he is to, Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes or one of their numbers. Like, I'm sorry, I just don't buy it.
Yeah, and it's like he doesn't have the physical traits that would make you want to invest that much in a quarterback. Because you look at Sam, like he has everything you want. Like Drew Brees, maybe not the most physically imposing player, but like a huge arm. I mean, Russell, like he's an athlete. You look at Brock, man, great. I love what he's done. Like I remember watching him at Iowa State, and never could I imagine what he's become. But yeah, don't mess around because, they wanted him once upon a time, apparently Mac Jones, and maybe this is it. Kyle can put any quarterback in there and win games. So we'll see what plays out. But yeah, I think just be healthy and they'll probably be fine as far as goes.
Hey, to me, it's like you're married, but you're at that work event, and you're at the bar, and that girl you liked in college, but you never got to get with, she's single, she comes up, you start talking. Things can get risky. Things can get dangerous. So just be careful out there, Brock Purdy. That's all I got to say about that. But I do want to mention a couple other teams, and we'll just hit them real quick here at the end of the show. But the New England Patriots, they have gone crazy. Josh Dobbs, Matt Hollins, Austin Hooper, those are all low-level deals. No big deal. But Morgan Moses is 34 years old. You gave him 3 years, $24 million. Garrett Bradbury, just okay. Harold Landry, 3 for 43. Listen, I have loved Harold Landry throughout his career. I thought he was an underrated player, but at this stage in his career, to give him that much money, crazy. Milton Williams, 4 years, $104 million. There is no way that signing is going to work out. I'm sorry, he's not in Philadelphia anymore.
Crazy.
It's different when you're not next to Jalen Carter, and you have to be Jalen Carter. That is a big difference. And Carlton Davis, 3 for 60, $20 million a year. Carlton Davis is a good player, but I mean, the Lions need cornerbacks, and they let him go. So I just think the Patriots are doing this thing where you get a new coach, you got a young quarterback, you spend as much as you can. And I don't know. I just don't like their moves. Like Carolina did that last year, but I liked what Carolina did. I do not like what the Patriots have done here.
Yeah, well, Mike pretty well. And, I was there in Tennessee back when Mike first got hired there. And, obviously, Honor Laundry is one of his guys from way back then. So
that's an inside joke for Titans folks for sure.
So that made Vince Young shout out. You understand why he would be there. I think Carlton Davis is a nice move. Like Spillane, there's a lot of Mike Vrabel type of guys that are there in New England defensively. It's just offensively. You're not protecting your quarterback. You haven't got him any sort of weapons at all. And for someone from Charlotte, North Carolina guy, come on, you got to help my boy Drake May out. And they're not doing that. So that's why it's a loss.
Yeah. No wide receiver help. Not enough on the offensive line, in my opinion. They were limited as to what they could do with what was available, of course, but that doesn't mean that it turned out great. Last team that I got to mention is Houston. We'll hit them real quick here. I just don't like what they did on the offensive line. They needed reinforcements on the offensive line, but I'm not a big fan of Cam Robinson. He was one of the worst offensive tackles in the NFL after he got traded to Minnesota. And Ed Ingram, Lincoln Tomlinson, I just don't think their offensive line got any better. So, that was their goal. That's what they needed to do, and I don't see it.
No, it's weird because they got rid of 2 guys that kind of struggled in protection and got 2 worse players that struggled in protection last year. I don't know. Again, how are you helping out your quarterback? And, man, you're in a division where, Tennessee – that's not going to work. I'm sorry.
No,
but let's be honest here. You probably
they should dominate the division.
That's not going to work. Jacksonville. I'm still holding out hope for Trevor Lawrence, but Liam Cohen gives me vibes that's not going to work. Indianapolis.
Yeah, I don't know if he's ready.
What are they doing in Indy right now? So Houston, you're going to win the division. You can build your team to be able to win the AFC, and they're not doing that. that is, I mean, that's frustrating for a Texans fan. Like, you'll go to the playoffs, but cool, you're going to not, maybe, I don't even know this year if you're going to even win in the wild card round based off of what they've done. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's tough for him. But that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On NFL. I am your host, the Madman, Tyler Rowland, for my co-host, Julian Council. Thanks for tuning in, and stay safe out there.